Hey, good afternoon, hockey fans. Welcome to the latest episode of the Odd Man Rush, brought to you by Intense Nutrition in Coral Springs and coming to you live on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. My name is David Zwerk. I'm your host. Work for Local 10 here in South Florida, covering the Florida Panthers. It's good to have you back. I hope everybody had a great Christmas holiday. Hopefully enjoying some time off from work. I know here in South Florida, we're pretty excited because the Heat, they're winning some games. The Dolphins are in control of their own fate. Kind of sucks what happens with the Canes not playing in the Tony the Tiger Bowl. But I mean, overall, I think things are looking pretty good in Canes land with our new AD and Mario Cristobal and all that. So, overall, it's a lot of positivity, big picture wise here in South Florida with sports. So with the Panthers, looks like they're getting back to business. Today was the second day that they've been on the practice since returning from the holiday break. They had practice yesterday at FLA Live Arena, and today they had a practice at the Ice Den in Coral Springs. They did a scrimmage. So let's kind of get you caught up on how everything is shaking out now that the team is back, hopefully resuming their schedule Wednesday, 2 nights from now, when they host the first leg of a back-to-back. Wednesday would be against the New York Rangers, and Thursday would be against the Tampa Bay Lightning, who feels like forever since we've seen the Lightning after last season, seeing them every other day, it felt like. You see it on your screen there, the Panthers' upcoming schedule. They got 3 home games in the next, over a 4-day span when they've got the Rangers, the Lightning, and then the New Year's Day battle against Montreal. You would think that that's going to be a pretty crazy game. Usually when the Panthers host, whether it's Toronto or Montreal during this week, the crowds are crazy. It's intense. It's fun. Hopefully we get all of that. Everything's a little up in the air with COVID and all that. But either way, the Panthers, who've been a great home team, they've got some home games coming up. They're getting healthier. Their roster is starting to look as intended. And let's just touch on that right now as we're going to talk about the last couple of days that they've been back on the ice. First thing, before the holiday break, we knew that 7 guys had been placed on the COVID protocols list. And they were Sam Bennett, Aaron Ekblad, Radko Gudas, Ryan Lomberg, Carter Verhaeghe, Frank Vetrano, and Brandon Montour. 7 guys. 7. All back. All skated this week, all practicing, all off the list. Should be good to go. So obviously right off the bat, a big positive there. Now added to the COVID protocol list this week were 4 guys. The big one is Jonathan Huberto. Obviously, he's been carrying the team a lot. So it's unfortunate for Huberto. Also, Mackenzie Weegar was part of the 4 guys. We saw what happened with Weegar in that Kings game where he played like 1,000 minutes. He's been amazing this year. 5-on-5 play has been spectacular for the most part, really carrying the load. Hopefully he'll get a goal one of these days. But Weegar, Huberto, Eetu Luosterainen, who has really solidified his spot on that 4th line, which we've talked about a lot. They've looked really good. They've been pretty consistent overall. So you hate to see that line have any kind of a shakeup. And then Owen Tippett, who's he's been a frustrating player this year in terms of the consistency hasn't been there. We touched on Tippett a bit last week. So those 4 guys are now in the COVID protocols. Now, Andrew Brunette did say after today's practice that he expects those 3 guys. Well, he said he expects 3 guys back, hopefully tomorrow, and then Huberto later this week. So just by process of elimination, the 3 guys not named Huberto currently on the list are Luosterainen, Tippett, and Weegar. So hopefully those guys will be back on the ice tomorrow, Tuesday, as the Panthers prepare for Wednesday's game against the Rangers. Huberto, Brunette said he's hoping to have back in the coming days. So Huberto, I would say, probably questionable at best for the back-to-back Wednesday, Thursday games. Everybody else will hopefully be there, which is a really good sign. We'll get a few more answers. Again, it's very fluid. That's what Brunette said. We'll get more answers as we get into it tomorrow's practice and then towards Wednesday's morning skate and all that good stuff. Overall, a lot of good signs. Obviously, the team is getting healthy from a COVID standpoint. Injuries are also getting better. And that's the other thing that we've seen in practice this week is injured players who had been out recently are back. Sasha Barkov, he's back. He was nearing a return before the holiday break, so looks like Barkov will be good to go. Mason Marchment, he was practicing before the holiday break. Now he's been back out there this week as well, and he spoke to the media today, which is a huge sign that he's going to be playing this week, because they would not make him available to the media if he was still going to be injured and out of the lineup. So I would expect him to be out there Wednesday as well. Other injured guys that were back, Maxime Mammon, he's been back on the ice. You remember Mammon, small sample size, but his last few games before his injury, he had been playing the best hockey of the season. So hopefully that's a level that he can jump back on when we get back to games here. And then finally, Gus Forzaling, who had been out with a non-COVID illness prior to the holiday break. Obviously there's been a lot of time for him to heal up. Andrew Burnett did say at one point that it was like a flu-like deal. So, we've all been there. Hopefully Forzaling that's all behind him now. He's been practicing this week, seems fine. So just a lot of overall good news as the Panthers are getting back to the lineup that, as intended when we started the season. And the only guys, hopefully by the end of this week, and then, in the next, 5 to 7 days, hopefully everybody should be back. And the only guys that they'd really be missing would be Noah Chari, who they're still hoping to get back probably sometime in the March-ish range, and Marcus Nudavara, who really suffered kind of a funky injury during practice. And, just it's unfortunate, but there's really no timetable with Nudavara's injury. And it's unfortunate because, you heard Bill Zito, he talked about it yesterday, and it's been kind of an ongoing trend with the Panthers. You can never have enough defensemen. It's the area that you really would love to have depth. And so obviously missing Nudie is tough. And hopefully for his sake, he'll be back before the end of the season. But we'll just have to see how it goes. Another roster update, Spencer Knight, who before the holidays had been sent to AHL Charlotte. He started a game down there. He's back. So now the Panthers have the 3 goaltenders. They've got Bob, they've got Knight, and they've got Jonas Johansson, who they picked up off waivers prior to the holiday break as well, a couple weeks prior. So now, I did ask Bill Zito yesterday, how you're planning on handling the 3 goalie roster situation. And he kind of danced around it, just saying it's going to be situational. But, one thing that in the moment, I hadn't really been thinking of, and after the fact, I realized is the taxi squads are back. And the Panthers, they haven't officially gotten into who their taxi squad is going to be. They haven't placed anybody there yet, but obviously a goaltender would be part of that. As you remember last year with Philippe DeRosier, he was basically on the taxi squad the whole year. So the taxi squads, just like with all the other COVID changes, will be good through the All-Star break, which is in early February. So we'll get it. I'm going to touch on all that in a little bit, what all those changes are. Between the taxi squads and adding guys to the roster and emergency call-up situations. We'll touch on all that in a minute. But, depth-wise, at least for goaltending, the Panthers will have their guys. Now, how the starts are going to shake out, we'll have to see. Obviously, Sergei Bobrovsky he's taken that one job, that starting job, and he's run with it. For the most part, he's having a very solid year. So you would think that he's going to be getting some more starts, or the majority of the starts, throughout the rest of the season. As my cat is chirping me over there, forgive me. And then between Johansson and Knight, we'll see, right? Johansson was going to get the start before the games were halted. Yesterday, Bill Zito did say that the goaltending brass really likes Johansson. They wanted to bring him in when they got the opportunity. It seems like a guy that they think, project-wise, they can kind of work with and turn him into a great goaltender in the system. So, we'll see how it all shakes out. But, overall, it's just kind of like with the defenseman. The depth is good. You're happy to have it. And, we'll see, taxi squad wise, how it all shakes out. So just kind of looking at the roster as it stands now, I like to keep everything on the up and up and go through it. Today, at practice, they did have a scrimmage. So you got a chance to see how things are shaking out with the lines. Obviously, that top line is back together. The Verhage, Barkov, Duclair line. I wouldn't expect any changes there. That should be the line that, when you go back into games, and that's going to be, your top line. Every guy's going to get special teams time, whether it's on the 1 or 2 power play. But yeah, I mean, that Verhage, Barkov, Duclair line was great earlier in the season, and I would expect that to, stay as is for the time being. The second line right now was Vetrano warming that Jonathan Huberto spot in the left wing, Sam Bennett centering, Sam Reinhart on the right. Again, as I kind of just said with Huberto, that's his spot. Obviously, Huberto is going to be on that line because Huberto and Barkov are just kind of the 1A, the 1B guys. What that means for Vetrano, we'll see. We've kind of seen him be among the bubble guys of late. So, if the Panthers get healthier, we're going to see how that all shakes out. What really intrigued me was the bottom six, mainly because of how the centers were put. The third line, what I would call the third line, was Marchment was playing left wing, Joe Thornton was centering, and Maxime Mammon was on the right. Now, the way that Mammon had been playing totally makes sense for him to get that third line right wing role. Sorry, a little cat discipline there as we're live, and that's what happens in a live show. So if Mammon can kind of resume his role, he's earned that spot, and he should be able to, we'll see where if he runs with it. Marchment, obviously, I love his return. He's the guy you saw last year. He plays up and down the lineup. He's really, I call him the Swiss Army knife of the Panthers forwards because he can really do any role. He can go in there and play a top line role. He can play center. He can play a thumper and produce wherever he is. He's not your prototypical guy, which is fine. You don't have to fit a round peg into a square hole or whatever it is. He works. What intrigued me about that line was Joe Thornton. And I think with Thornton, I'm always just kind of considering him okay, he's, they're really managing his time and managing his minutes. And we've seen him, whether he's healthy, whether they're nursing him back. He was out with an injury earlier in the year. Now he's been healthy, but he's still been kind of in and out of the lineup a bit, which is fine. I mean, it seems like a situation that everybody's comfortable with. And Thornton is obviously very helpful, not just during games, but at practices in the locker room, helping teach the younger guys. Like he's just the great in the same kind of scope as the Radko Gudas edition and the Patrick Hornquist edition. These are all just great guys that in addition to their contributions on the ice, they're huge off the ice as well. And that's really, where we're at with the Panthers right now. It's not just, trying to build the perfect roster, but it's well forming the team in terms of talent, in terms of maturity, leadership, experience. I mean, they're really hitting on all the points at this level. So it's good to see. I would expect that third center spot to go back to Anton Lundell when everybody's healthy and it shakes out. That's why I was kind of surprised that Thornton wasn't on the fourth line instead with Ryan Lomberg and Patrick Hornquist, those wingers. And that, up until recently had been Eetu Luostarinen. Now he's on the COVID list. Hopefully he'll be back tomorrow. We'll see. And if so, I would expect Luostarinen to take that spot in that fourth line, Wonder Twin Powers activator, whatever, Wonder Third Powers, but get that unit back together because they've been so good and so consistent. And I at least want to let them ride it out and we'll see how it goes. So, we'll see how it shakes out. I would think that Lundell would go back up to that third line where Thornton will be, in another lineup. We'll see. Thornton can play wing also, which we've saw. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like the odd guys out, once everything's healthy, the same ones we've been mentioning. It's Owen Tippett until he can really bring that consistency and start contributing points wise, because that's really where we're at. It's not just playing well. It's not just enough to keep you in the lineup because everybody's really playing well. You've got to play well and be productive. Owen Tippett, Frank Vetrano, the production, it's too sporadic. They need to be more consistent. That kind of, production, that kind of contribution would fly in past years because the Panthers weren't as deep, not even close to what they are now. Things have changed, right? So yeah, Tippett and Vetrano, until they, right there, question, what do you think about Tippett? I think, as I was just saying, consistency is the problem. Like he shows flashes that he can do it. His possession was looking more improved. He was holding on to the puck a bit more. His positioning was better. He wasn't getting lost in the fray, but he's not producing points wise. And it's just, again, I just keep going back to it. It's consistency. And on this team with this depth, you've got to be able to perform and show up night in and night out. And I mean, for Tippett especially, like this is a guy who was given a shot on a very productive line with Huberto and Bennett. And really the only one on that line that's been keeping up to that pace is Huberto. Sam Bennett also has been struggling, but he adds a lot more on both ends of the ice. He's obviously a great two-way player. He plays on all special teams, all even strength. He plays in all situations. It brings a bit more to the table than Owen Tippett. And that's why Tippett is going to end up on the roster bubble, because he's not providing the same goodness that everyone else is. And then Joe Thornton, I mentioned he's, bubble guy, just, they manage his minutes. So, he's just always going to be kind of a guy that can be in and out of the lineup. But forward wise, that's kind of how I see it all shaking out. Hopefully health wise, we've gotten through some of these injury issues, now that Barkov's coming back, now that Marchman's coming back. And then COVID wise, I mean, you just cross your fingers and hope. I mean, everybody's going to be very safe. They're back to the old protocols. We'll get into that in just a moment. But yeah, you just got to kind of keep your fingers crossed and hope. I'm going to get to the way the defense shaked out in just a second. But first, as we're at the halfway point, I do want to talk about the show's sponsor, Intense Nutrition, because they are awesome. And if you guys haven't already, I hope you're going to go check them out soon, because they've really got you covered for anything that you need in the nutrition and the supplement sphere. Intense Nutrition, they're at 2540 North University Drive on Coral Springs. Just a few minutes from the Panthers ice then. So if you're ever there playing a hockey game, getting your skate sharpened, hopefully checking out a practice again one of these days, you can just slide right over, go down to university, make a right, just a couple minutes, and there's Intense Nutrition for you. They offer you great prices, big box store prices, but they also bring you the personal touch of a local business, one that you're always going to find superior quality and superior service. Their amazing and well-knowledge staff is going to take care of all your vitamin and supplement needs, and they will work one-on-one with you. Don't be afraid to grab someone, pull them aside, because their staff is so knowledgeable. They'll work with you one-on-one for your own specific stacks, whatever you need, whether you're an athlete working out all the time, whether you're just getting a little bit older and want to be healthier, or again, as we keep seeing, cold and flu season is hitting hard and you just want to be better prepared for that. They've got your back. Another really awesome thing that they offer at Intense Nutrition is the Intense Cleanse and Detox. You can lose 10 to 15 pounds in just 10 days. Just go into Intense Nutrition, ask them about the Intense Cleanse and Detox, and they will set you up. And then just whatever you need for your pre and post workout regimens, they've got you covered. Just go in there, ask for help, and they will hook you up. They're awesome, awesome people at Intense Nutrition. Like I said, located at 2540 North University Drive in Coral Springs. That's right on the corner of University and Royal Palm Boulevard. Or you can just give them a call and they'll set you up. 954-775-0257. That's Intense Nutrition in Coral Springs. Just you see the number flashing at the bottom of the screen, 954-775-0257, or stop by and they will hook you up. Okay, so back to kind of the lineup, the way that it's shaking up right now. The D pairings. Obviously, with Mackenzie Weegar on the COVID list, there's a trickle-down effect, right? Gus Forzaling is back. He took that top spot with Aaron Ekblad during practice this week and during today's scrimmage. But again, obviously, when Weegar comes back, hopefully tomorrow, he'll get that spot, and then we'll see how it trickles back down with Forzaling getting back in there. You would think Forzaling will go back to his pairing with Radko Gudas on, basically the second pairing, but Gudas, he's back from the COVID, as I mentioned before. And just really a quick side note on Radko Gudas. Just what a great season is he having. Just so steady, so consistent, doing what he does very well. I mean, obviously hitting everybody and everything in sight, but also big, timely hits, clean hits, not getting in penalty trouble, not doing any of the stuff that kind of the first part of his career was highlighted by. He's cleaned up his game and he just plays it so well. And he plays such a solid, hard-nosed game. In addition to all the off-ice stuff that we were talking about before. Maybe an unsung hero of this season, but I just really credit to Radko Gudas, who's been just great in his role this year. And obviously, Gus Forzaling has been great with him on that pairing. But yeah, I just wanted to give a little shout out to Radko because he's been so great this year. And then that bottom pairing, it's kind of been Brandon Montour and a revolving door, if you will. Now that they're a bit healthier with the younger guys, Lucas Carlson has been in and out of the lineup. He's been not bad, still a little rough around the edges. But you can see something there with Carlson. A bit of a physical presence. He can move the puck well. He's a good skater. Defensive positioning. At first, he looked a little lost, as did Olu Levy. But, your first games with a new team, new defensive partners, new systems, there is always an adjustment period. Practices and games are very different. But yeah, Carlson and then Levy, as I mentioned, those two guys are kind of going to be like that 6-7 defenseman. And then again, having the practice or the taxi squad rather is going to be very helpful as well, because then it just gives you that depth and that cushion that you need, that little peace of mind at the bottom of the roster. And so, yeah, that's, those 7 guys, Wiederek, Lad, Forzaling, Gudis, Montour, and then Carlson and Levy. Those will probably be your defenseman for now. As I said, it would not surprise me to see another, more NHL tiered guy brought in to add to that depth ahead of the trade deadline, but we'll see how that all shakes out. I mean, there's so much crazy stuff going on right now with COVID, the Olympic break, getting, no Olympics. It's now going to be makeup games and all-star break. And yeah, so that kind of gets me into the next thing I wanted to talk about. And that's just the temporary changes that have been brought about in the NHL because of this coronavirus Omicron outbreak that it's kind of washing across North America right now. So the big thing is the return of the taxi squads, which I think that's huge. I think it's very helpful. Obviously, it's super helpful because look at the craziness that happened before the holiday break with the postponements and teams, not just Florida, but teams playing games ridiculously shorthanded. So yeah, the taxi squads are huge. And just to kind of refresh you on what that means, you get up to 6 players on a taxi squad. It's going to run, all these COVID changes are running from now through the All-Star break, which right now the All-Star game is scheduled for February 5th. The Panthers' last game is February 1st. Most teams are in that first, second range. So yeah, you're going to get a little bit over a month of basically kind of last season's issues or protocols, or with COVID, with roster flexibility. I'll touch on that in just a moment. As it was last year with assigning players to the taxi squad, everybody that would be assigned, they're subject to their waiver requirements. Some players don't require waivers to go down. Most do. So again, it's an easier thing to mitigate when you got the 23-man roster plus the 6 guys in the taxi squad. And then there's also emergency exceptions as well. If a COVID test should pop up overnight, or a guy's morning test comes back before the 5:00 roster deadline on a game day, there are ways to make sure that no team is going to have to play with 16 guys or 17 guys or one goalie or any of the crazy stuff that we've seen recently. One final note on the taxi squad: nobody in this condensed time, nobody can be on the taxi squad for more than 20 days cumulatively. So basically that means nobody can be on the taxi squad for more than 20 days total, whether it's consecutively, whether it's 5-5-5, however it might go. 20 days is the max. Now there's also been modifications, temporary modifications to the collective bargaining agreement in order to allow for these changes to happen with moving guys from the NHL to the AHL to the roster squad. Any emergency call-up can be made for a player whose average annual value is $1 million or less. So obviously you can't play around with guys that are making, decent money. Those players not obviously, but it would be assumedly have a little bit more to do with the team's day-to-day operations. So they're, just trying to condense it into most of the guys that would be fluctuating through rosters anyway. Goaltenders can be brought up immediately from the taxi squad if there's any issue. No team is going to have to, if at all avoidable, is going to have one goalie, no goalie on the bench. The e-bug situation is, emergency is literally the first word in e-bug, so it should be for an extreme emergency only. So goaltenders can be brought up immediately to the taxis from the taxi squad to the roster. And as I said, the goal is to make sure that nobody's playing shorthanded. Other changes that are happening right now, like media-wise, all of our, we're now only going to be on Zoom as we were last year. We'll see if that sticks after, the All-Star break and February. But for now, that's where we're back to doing everything on Zoom and phone calls and all that, fun non-face-to-face stuff. So And then the teams themselves are going back to kind of they've gone back. It was instituted before the holiday break. But the pre-COVID protocols, so, wearing masks, keeping like distance in the locker rooms. I know the Panthers have already spread out and they're utilizing back locker rooms just to keep the players distanced and a little bit more room there. Meetings, there's a lot of virtual meetings once again going on. You're not trying to get everybody in one big room anymore. And then obviously back to daily testing as well. And yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's all about safety and whatever you may or may not think of the coronavirus and what's happening right now. At the end of the day, this is a business and these are people that need to be taken care of just like any other human beings. And that's what the NHL and the NHLPA are trying to collectively do. And that's take care of everybody and keep everybody safe and healthy. So yeah, the last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up the show, and man, I can't believe it's already 2:26. This one went by really fast. Are the possibilities for the taxi squad? Who's going to populate Florida's taxi squad for the next, I guess, 6 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks? Obviously, you're going to have a goalie on there, whether it's Knight or Johansson or how that's going to be rotated or whatever. I asked Bill Zito that yesterday. I told you before, I asked him kind of about how he's going to handle it. And the vibe I got was it's going to be case by case. I mean, injuries are going to pop up potentially. You don't know what's going to happen with COVID. And, you hope for the best. You plan for the worst. I mean, last year, the Panthers had a guy in their taxi squad the whole year. And I think he only dressed 1 or 2 games. I remember he went out there, he did his rookie lap for the 1 game. So hopefully that won't be an issue. But again, we'll see. Because you remember the Panthers also had they had Sam Montembeau last year, so they had some options. But anyway, goaltending wise, they should be okay. Forward possibilities, right? I'm thinking obviously Alexei Heponiemi and Grigory Denisenko would be guys that you would think of just because they've been call ups. They're your recent draft picks. You want to get them in the NHL. You want to see if they can cut it at that level. So obviously, I would think that those guys would be candidates for the taxi squad. Guys that might get looks, but we'll see because they're still rookies and professional rookies. That's Logan Hutzgo and Cole Schwent. They're having great rookie seasons in AHL Charlotte. They co-lead the team with 19 points in 27 games for each of them. So they're both off to really good starts. Do you want to interrupt that and put them on a taxi squad, or do you want to, as I said, that's their first pro year, so do you want to kind of let that roll? But again, there are possibilities. Veteran possibilities, guys that are, the older vets that might, they often are called up just because they've been around the block. You got Zach Dalpe and Scott Wilson. Last year we saw the taxi squad more with the younger guys, so we'll have to see how that all shakes out. But I'd say Heponiemi and Denisenko probably, Hutzgo and Schwent maybe, Dalpe and Wilson are more like your guys situationally, just because they're veterans. And then I know a lot of guys asked about Sarah Noel. It just does not seem like he's ready yet. It's been a slow process for him. He's got 8 points, 1 goal through 24 games. It's just, I don't think he's quite there yet. Defenseman wise for the taxi squad, obviously the next man up is Chase Prisky. He's played very well in Charlotte this year. He had a great game in that Kings game where the Panthers were shorthanded, playing, whatever it was, 20, 25, 26 minutes, playing his 3rd game in 3 days. So Chase Prisky, I think, is at the top of that list. And then next man up would be Matt Pierstead. He's shown that he can play at the NHL level. Obviously, he still has some rounding out to do in his style, maturity-wise, but they should be okay. And then, as I said, I do expect the defensive depth to have some additions to it between now and the trade deadline. We'll see how that all shakes out. The good thing about the Panthers having the depth that they have is that you've got assets that you can flip. And this will be a topic that we'll touch on as we get closer to the trade deadline. But yeah, so that's it. That was a quick show. Went by really fast as we had a lot to catch up on. But yeah, that's it for this week's episode of the Odd Man Rush, presented by Intense Nutrition, brought to you on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. Once again, I want to thank my amazing producer, Manny Chang, who couldn't join me verbally because the internet is sketchy, but who's been producing the show and does a bang up job. He is flawless. He is amazing. And I love Manny. Hopefully he'll be able to join me on the show and chat a bit next week. But just a big thanks to Manny, because he works his butt off and he does such good work. Thank you to everybody who's watching. Thank you to all the commenters. Thank you to everybody who's watching after the fact, all the people who tweet me and ask me questions. I love it. Please keep it coming. I'm happy to interact with you guys. And just, thank you. I hope everyone had a great holiday. Please take care of yourselves and be safe. Until next week, from my producer, Manny Chang, from my sponsor, Intense Nutrition, I am David Dwork. Be kind, stay safe. See ya.